5:33. I'm just going to say just one thing before I pass it over to Ms. McCall. I want to say good evening to everyone, and before we begin tonight's discussions, I'd like to take a moment to thank our administration for their hard work in crafting this budget. We recognize the time, the thought, and the care that went into developing it, as well as the extra effort it took to make last-minute adjustments at the board's request. Your responsiveness and your commitment to the process is deeply appreciated. I'd also like to thank the public for joining us this evening. Your presence and engagement are vital to ensuring that our decisions reflect the needs and values of our communities. Thank you again for being part of this important discussion. With that, we will pass it on to Ms. McCall.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Sarah, we'll go ahead and move to the next slide. Whoops.
Maybe. I didn't even touch it. There it is. Oh.
Thank you. So this is our budget process and timeline, just to share with you the process that we go through and the opportunities that we allow for some input and look forward to some input actually from the community. So we begin the budget process in October. And this year was the first time we instituted something a little new. It was called a new public finance forum that we held. And we invited all community members to attend and give us some input and feedback on maybe suggestions of things that we can do to either curb the budget or increase revenues. And so we invited, I think we had probably 6 or 7 people that attended that first, that evening. And then as we move through the process in December, we start accepting requisitions. November and December start getting requisitions from building administrators, coming from their teachers, and what are the supplies that are needed. And also we begin to look at enrollment and see if we need to increase or decrease staff and start to have those conversations. January 1st, we start, in the beginning of the year, we start looking at where the budget is and if it's what I call tolerable for what the taxpayers can assume. And then we start making some cuts, and often that goes back to the educators and the staff to ask what eliminations or what cuts can they make from their supplies or resources or programming that would help to cut some of the budget. And actually this year we went through 2 rounds of that, sending it back to educators, asking for them to continue to make some cuts, because I knew that our first round was more than what we could even go to the public with. In March and April, we had budget workshops. We had 4 opportunities this year, counting the finance forum. Our budget workshops are open to the public, and we do have some people that attend and ask great questions. And it also helps to guide us in what the taxpayers are seeking and gathering some input. So there are 4 different opportunities throughout the course of the budget process where it's a formal budget workshop and opening for people to come. Along the way, we start learning in February, we get what's called our EDD 279. That's the document that comes from the Maine Department of Education that tells us what we will be getting for subsidy from the state to operate our schools. Insurance was a bit turbulent this year, health insurance. We first learned in the beginning that it was probably an 18% increase, that would be the maximum. So we began building our budget based on that information. And as weeks moved along, we then received another email saying that the maximum would be 14%. So that was, we made the adjustments to the budget once again, from 18% to 14%, which was a good direction. And then in the final phases, as we were well along in the process, we learned that it was actually going to be a 7% increase for health insurance. So that once again helped us to make another adjustment. But it's a moving target as the year goes along, as we don't learn about these things until we're well into the process and we continue making adjustments. So often people will ask in January, February, and March, what does the budget look like? And Mr. Bushire might have an idea, but we can't give you any exact numbers because of the things that are moving targets that I just mentioned. And of course, by the time we roll around to May, we have our first budget meeting and our first budget validation referendum on June 10th. So, Sarah, you go to the next one, thanks. So there's a continuation, as you know, that's why we're here tonight, is the budget failed at the BVR and on June 10th. So the board and Mr. Bushire and I met again and looked at the budget to see what we could do to reduce costs, but not at the expense of educating our students or at the expense of our students' safety and meeting their needs. Key components when we're building the budget, as you'll see, enrollment and staff. Once again, I mentioned the ED 279. In that document, are the number of students that we have enrolled. Our subsidy is based on that enrollment, so when we decline enrollment and we lose some subsidy, of course, if we gain more students, we gain more subsidy. Revenues, that goes along with tuition, and enrollment is involved in that, and then we have our state subsidy, as I just mentioned, that we learned about through the 279. There are municipal assessments, cost of operations, and salary and benefits are all key components as we are building our budget. Our enrollment and staff, so these numbers are just for Carroll Community School and Carroll High School. These are based upon the EPS funding report that I just mentioned, the Essential Programs and Services funding, which the 279 comes from. So our student enrollment, 1,189, and classroom teachers between those two buildings, we have 70. Other staff, 26.8, that includes our librarians, guidance, health, ed techs, and clerical, and administration, we have 4. This does not include our special ed population of staff, as that's on the next slide. So our enrollment for our special ed, we have 228 students that have IEPs. 11 of those students attend a special purpose school, which typically for us is, some of you may know as OTC. Classroom teachers for special ed, we have 13. Other staff, 24.6, which again is ed techs, PT, OT, speech, and testing consultant. And we have 1 administrator, special ed. Enrollment and staff for the Carroll Regional Tech Center, student enrollment there is 209. Keep in mind that's Carroll students, but it's also students that are from sending schools, Ashland, Washburn, Prescott, and Fort Fairfield. Classroom teachers for the Tech Center, we have 13. As far as other staff, clerical, ed tech, and guidance, that's 3, and 1 administrator at that level. So the budget proposed tonight is $24,885,053.21, which is an increase above last year's budget of $1,440,951.62, which equates to a 6.15 increase.
One more, this is financial stuff, it's real exciting. As Mrs. McCall mentioned on the previous slide, because you go back to the first. The one on the left, I guess I like to call the shot slide, because that's where we start out, and as you can see, numbers are pretty amazing. The budget we're submitting is an increase, as you can see, of $1,000,004. But I want to note that that amount reflects the budget increase, the expense budget increase, not the increase to the taxpayers. And we'll talk about that more as we go along. So the budget is made up of 2 major components. You have your expenses and you have your revenues. And in schools and probably most any organization, the two must match. The revenues have to balance your expenses. What we're displaying now is the revenues. And these are the ones, and we'll get into a little bit more as we move on, but these are the revenues that we've budgeted for this year. Our largest source of revenues is state subsidy, which Mrs. McCall referred to, the EPS of the ED 279. And this year, we were very fortunate to have an increase of $1,066,000. $66,000, which was some of that split for our CTE center. That increase in subsidy is a major reason why we're not asking the taxpayers for that, $1.4 million that I spoke about earlier. And this is a portion of move on. So, as part of our revenue, we have to, there are municipal assessments, and this is what impacts the local taxpayers. Again, a large part of our revenue is state subsidy, but in order to receive the state subsidy, the local communities must essentially have skin in the game. And the state determines how much those amounts are. And this is what makes up the local contribution tax assessment. Now, these numbers here also reflect there's $100,000 in adult ed we have to include. That does not come out of the local, well, we assess the local tax rate, but it's reimbursed through the adult ed program. And again, as you can see, our budget increased by $1.4 million, but what we are asking the taxpayers of Carroll is only an increase of $227,000. So I'd like to show historical municipal assessments, and primarily just we try, and we're taxpayers too, and we're developing a budget, and the board is developing a budget. We know that our goal is to keep the tax impact as low as possible, but yet we've got to meet the needs of the schools so that we can educate our children, educate our future, right? As you can see, we've had in the last couple of years, we're pretty bad. We had some tough years, but prior to that, I consider them, reasonable. Considering, everything, at home, our stuff, groceries are going up, electricity is going up, heating oil, it goes up for the schools department as well. But I did want to point out there are 4 years where we actually, I just consider gave money back to the communities. And the average, the average is about $197 that we're asking, which is what we 0.44 mils, and that's a mine mill, that's not a city of Cary mill. Those are completely different, and this is where I will get into that a little later. But I guess what I'm saying, in my opinion, the RSU has been really kind and decent to the taxpayers, and we only ask for what we absolutely need. Again, the last couple of years were pretty bad, but extenuating circumstances of COVID. But now we are back on track, and I think this is a reasonable ask of the taxpayers. Cost of operations, this is the expense side of the house, and you'll have the opportunity to vote on each article, and you'll hear more information on each article in greater detail as we go on. I do want to point out the fifth line down, which is student and staff. You can tell it's a pretty significant increase. And you'll hear this again later, but I'm gonna lay on the sword. This, somehow, when I was developing and working on the budget last year, I omitted a nurse from the budget and didn't realize, so I was building the budget this year. So I have to add that position back in. So it was making that number look really a lot worse than it should have been.
Quickly just touch upon the salaries and benefits. So this year was a bit of a unique year. We had actually two contracts that we were in the process of negotiating. One was the teacher's contract, and the other was the techs and secretaries, which we call the support staff contract. And so through the negotiation process and the time that takes, and those contracts are typically a 3-year contract once they are ratified. But through the process, we were able to make, it was some slight movement in cost sharing on insurance. In the past, most of the groups except for the family, it was 100% covered by the district. And with the new collective bargaining agreements, this people who choose to take single plans, that's still 100% coverage. But people who have families with child, or children, it's a 97-3 split, 97 to the district and 3% to the individual and family plans are 75-25. So it's been a number of years, but it was a rewarding process, I think, for both groups on each side of the table to be able to work together to try to make some movement in that direction. And also, we had a new law that became effective stating that our ed techs need to be, the law expectation is they are to be paid 125% above minimum wage. And our secretarial staff needs to be paid 115% above minimum wage. So we have, just for example, for ed techs, we have 34 ed techs. So when we make that adjustment in salaries in order to meet the law, it definitely impacts the budget. Cost of operations, I think it's no secret that we were the second largest employer in Caribou, and we have a lot of staff. So our budget, 79% of our budget is made up of salary and benefits. So when there is an increase in insurance or adjustments made due to raises, then it has an impact on the budget. Yes, the next couple of slides, we had some community people ask some questions the past couple of meetings, so we're trying to address some of those questions that were asked at the previous meeting.
Bruce, you gonna catch me if I step off? And as Mrs. McCall mentioned, this is in response, and I'm glad they asked this question because I wanted to look at this. I looked at it a few years ago, but I want to look at it again. This slide here shows the data that was compiled by our architects in 2016 in preparation of our new school referendum. So when we had the referendum in February of whatever year to obtain approval to proceed with the new school construction, we had to list a savings amount right on the ballot. And we had to project what our savings would be for the next 2 years after the school was open. And I'm pleased to say we met that obligation, but we have, as many as you know, because we've lived through them, the Caribou Middle School, Learning Center, Tea Park, and Hilltop School. Combined, we looked at the maintenance costs, and that's like not a major repair, but fixing a broken window or patching a tile, routine maintenance, water and sewer, electricity and heating. And our architects calculated what that cost would be at that time. And it is, this is sleeper. So 546,394 was what it cost to maintain those 4 buildings in that year. And so remember that number. So when I compare that to the last year's budget and then this current year's budget, just to see, are we still saving money? And we are. Last year, we still saved $270,400, and this year it's $328,726. And then I did, for the heck of it, I ran the architect's numbers through an inflation calculator, and with that in mind, last year we would have just under $500,000 in savings that we would be paying today if we had not built a new school. And now, keep in mind, this is only maintenance costs, the heat, the lights, routine maintenance. This does not include any repairs to roofs, like replacing windows, doors, boilers. I know there was a boiler at Hilltop that was just hanging on. But if any of that since then had failed, what that would cost, there's no way to put a price tag on that. So that was something we had to consider. But over time, and we are still saving the district a considerable amount of money by having this new school. I guess a couple of other points, kind of deviating from this a little bit, is I'd like you all to consider what the new school project did for the city of Caribou as well, not just the RSU, but take a look at Bennett Drive. The brand new T park, right? The basketball court, tennis court, softball field, new parking area. Our project built 2 buildings for the rec department. And basically we were replacing what we took when we swapped land, I guess, for the project. And then that cost us about 1.4 million to do all that. So that's 1.4 million that the taxpayers did not have to come up with. This was completely funded by the state school construction project. In addition, the old buildings that we had, that were on the previous slide, they would have, they eventually would have had to come down. And the cost of demolishing those buildings and updating them, getting rid of asbestos and all the other nasty stuff, was $1.9 million. That, again, the state paid 100%, didn't cost local taxpayers anything. And those are costs that we would have had to incur had we not had the new school. I guess it's not me plugging that new school. Another question that came up at a past meeting during a public comment was, they want to know what our per pupil costs were. And I did a comparison to our neighbors. And when considering per pupil costs, it's not as simple as taking the total budget divided by the number of students. There are certain things that have to come out, like other miscellaneous expenses, the state pulls, debt service, which is like $3.2 million to us. That's completely funded by the state. That is not factored in, because it's really no cost. So, as you can see, we're in the ballpark. We're pretty competitive with our neighbors, a little better than our neighbors. There's more, we have more historical data. If you look on page 21 of on the top of the budget, you'll see how the RSU compares to the state average.
There seems to be a lot of confusion around some of the numbers that I think stirred up some conversation from the last time we presented the budget. So in an attempt to try and get some clarification to that. So just to share with you, so the required local, each of these categories, the required local, the additional local, the local debt service, and adult education, those are the things that are combined together that determine what we need to ask the taxpayers for in order to fund our full budget. So the required local is what taxpayers have to pay in order for us to get the state subsidy. So if we as taxpayers are not willing to pay the $2,698, then we can't get the $16,837. We have to, that's required, and that number is given to us in the ED 279, that comes from the state. So if we as taxpayers were to say we're not paying the required local, then we would get a lesser amount. They would run it through the funding formula, and we would get less than $16 million in based on ratio. The next component is additional local. That's the difference. When we look at our revenues that we're bringing in, we're looking at what we're getting from the required local. And this is the difference in the amount that we need in order to meet the budget amount that we have set to manage our schools and educate our students. We have a local debt service. The local debt service is, right now it consists of the extra gym and the extra music room space that was voted on and approved when we built the Caribou Community School. That also includes a portion of the Caribou High School track. The majority of that track was paid for with COVID funds, but when it came to the end, we needed $660,000 more, and that's what that is from. So that's what the local debt service consists of for us, so $175,000. So if you add all of those together, you get a total general fund amount. And then adult education is $95,000 this year. We get reimbursed that 100%. We get that back next year, but it has to be included in the budget. So the grand total for this year of what we're asking for from taxpayers for is the $5,728,525. Now, keep in mind, when we talk about a mill rate, the mill rate that we use for the RSU 39 is provided to us by the Maine Revenue Service Property Tax Division. They tell us this year, as we're building our budget, that 1 mill is equivalent to $531,900. That is not the same mill rate that the city uses when they prepare our taxes. So that's confusing. So when you hear us say that our budget is a 0.43 mil increase, that is based on the mill rate that we're getting to build our budget. So that can be confusing and understandably so. So in order for the city to prepare our taxes, there are 3 components. They need to know what the school budget amount is, what we're asking for. They need to know what the county of Aroostook is asking for. And they also need to know what the city budget, approved budget is. So they can combine those 3 asks, if you will. And when they add those together, and then they come up with what they need from us as taxpayers and what the mill rate is according to these things. And I'm sure you're all aware, this school budget is the only one that we were able to vote on as taxpayers. We don't have say in the city budget, and we don't have say in the Aroostook County budget. The other thing that's a bit challenging to understand when you're looking at our tax bill is that when we get our taxes this year, we are actually paying for half of last year that we just completed, January through June. And the other portion is from the new year that we will be entering next year. Because of the different fiscal years, our district school year, it ends June 30th and the new year begins July 1st. The city begins January 1st, their fiscal year, and then December 31st. So because there is that overlap, if you will, what we're asking from our taxpayers, like I said, the $5,720,525, actually we'll be paying for half of that in our taxes this year, but we're also still paying for the 24-25 school year, which is a different amount. It's $2,750,691, because that was the budget that was approved last year. That's challenging. So when you ask at the city what is being paid, that amount is not going to come up to $5,720,000 because of the different fiscal years. So I think those are some of the things that have posed some misunderstandings, if you will. So in summary, for this, so the budget total for RSU 39 that the board feels is what we need to then run our school department efficiently, but also to support our students to best meet their learning needs. Is $24,885,053. That's an increase over last year, the 24-25 budget. It's an increase of $1,440,142. But that is not what's expected of the taxpayers. Because we got an increase in state subsidy, that $1,066,000 gets applied to that increase that I just mentioned, the $1.4 million. Also, we have additional revenues, $146,811. That gets applied to the increase of the $1.4 million. So the increase to the Caribou taxpayers from the 24-25 school budget to the 25-26 school budget is $227,143. So with that said, we're going to close out that PowerPoint and we're going to move to our budget booklet. So in the beginning, we've added some new components. We'll break it down to the important stuff. So if you look at page 6, we tried to preface this document so you would see what are some of the cost drivers that have caused some of the increases in our budget. The top of the page, those are the things that we have brought forward the first round of our budget, and then at the bottom half of page 6 are the other expenses and further clarification of the difference between the budget we first presented and this budget we are now presenting before you tonight. You'll notice, looking at page 7, which is Article 1, under Article 1, it lists the components of what makes up Article 1. So there's kind of a descriptor to help you understand where things are identified in the budget. At the bottom of page 7, it has article notes. Those are some of the explanations as to why we had increases or decreases that we deem to be a little bit more significant, if you will. So on each of the articles, you'll see those notes as I just mentioned above. So looking at Article 1, which is on page 7, you'll notice a course reimbursement. It's 48.5% less, and that's because we had fewer staff than last year requesting some course reimbursements. They give us that anticipated need as we're building the budget, and it was fewer this year, so that's a decrease in that line because of that. Equipment rental, we have an anticipated increase, that's photocopiers, and we contract for our services for photocopiers. And we use fewer textbook resources, but that doesn't mean that we don't photocopy and make resources for our students to use. Tuition to other districts, we decreased it because we just haven't used it in the past. In the past, last year we had 22,000. We didn't use that amount of money, so we felt comfortable reducing it down to 8,000 and as a 63% decrease, but we feel comfortable with that considering our pattern. That's where Mr. Bouchard frequently looks at our actuals to see what, and you'll see that throughout the budget process, he looks at the actuals to see what we actually spent. And if it's an area that we feel confident that we can reduce that, then we certainly do. Supplies is an increase of 26.1%. That's ELA supplies and power hours. Some of these things used to be funded by Title I or by COVID. And we have to start paying for those in our general budget. Textbooks, that's a huge increase, 331%. But keep in mind that that's the largest portion of that is our grades 6 through 8 science textbooks. But that's for 3 grade levels, and it's a subscription for 3 years. So it is costly, but obviously it will be not having to spend that the next 2 years on those resources. Technology, that's one of the things we reallocated it. Sometimes we learn as we're going through the process that we maybe have to put it in the correct line or the correct article. So you will see, even though it's a reduction here, you will see that we have reallocated it to what I would say, Mr. Borchardt would say is the appropriate place where it should be, an appropriate cost center. Dues and fees, this is one you're going to see throughout the budget. I will explain it each time. But for years, we have been a member of an organization CASE, and it's for professional development opportunities for our staff. And this year, we have decided to not participate in that organization. We feel that we can meet the professional development needs of our staff better by having a local person to help guide that work, as opposed to an organization that's trying to meet the needs of many communities. And you will see, like I said, cases designated in different places because it depends on where the staff is, the work that the staff does and their support. So that is Article 1. Article 2, special education, that's on page 8. You'll notice the first line, after the first two, the salaries and benefits. Some of that increase is from the law that I mentioned to you, 125% above minimum wage for the ed techs. And we have, I believe, 17 ed techs. We had last year 17 ed techs in special ed. So that causes some increase to that. We have also added some of our nursing staff salary to the special ed, and we help special ed students as well, so we were able to allocate some of the salary benefits to this line, so that's part of the reason for those increases. Looking at actually course reimbursement, we had, that is a huge increase of 494%. But it went from 2,500 to 14,000. So that increase is due to the fact that we have 4 staff that are requesting professional development or certification needs. We also have under professional development and training, there's an increase there, 43%. By law, we have to have restraint and seclusion training annually, and people need to be trained. And there are trainers who train trainers, and that is an increase this year due to having to make sure that we are adhering to the law at that. Our special purpose private school, there's a reduction there. We are moving some of the funding that's needed to provide those students that opportunity to go there. some of that is shifting to one of our federal grants, which is called local entitlement. So we were able to decrease the general budget with that. Telephone and postage is one of those things that always kind of comes up and bites us. We do know that there's an increase in postage this year, and the special ed department has a lot of paperwork that is required by law to be sent out to families. They can receive it electronically, but many want to or need to have the written copy. So hence the increase in that portion. Supplies and books. Carroll High School has instituted a new program, special ed program, Pathways, and that requires certain materials and supplies to be purchased in order for that program to run, to meet the students' needs and to adhere to the expectations of the law. Dues and fees, that is actually, it's not necessarily an increase, it's new for this. We haven't had a line budgeted for that. And so that are state and regional special ed associations. And so we have been supporting those things, but we didn't have it officially in the budget. But warranted its own line. Article 3, our career and technical education, which is on page 9. I will, salary and benefits, we have a new math, it's one teacher, but it's a math and science position that will be there, but that is completely covered by the subsidy in the 279 for the tech center. Course reimbursement is decreased, fewer staff requesting course reimbursement and planning on taking courses. Purchase services, that's a JMG contract as jobs remain grads increase. We had partnership and JMG had been paying for a larger portion of it, but the plan is always for the district to become more sustainable independently. So that was an increase in the CT budget. Advertising is a decrease. We're using more social media platforms and the platform Indeed when it comes to advertising or sharing our good news. Travel is an increase in this budget because we reinstituted Skills USA. At the time, for a period of time, we didn't have somebody who's willing to lead that, and now we do, so there's an increase, but of course that requires some travel and other expenses, so we need to increase that in that line, and then the faculty conference is also included. Supplies, the big supplies area, 23%, but we have culinary and welding increase, and looking at what we have allotted in the past wasn't adequate or enough to run those programs, so the director recommended an increase. Fuel for vehicles, of course, budget increase due to past usage. Once again, looking at our actuals, we had last year we did budget 16,000. That wasn't enough, so that line needed to increase. Under operations and management, we reduced part-time custodian. We had 2 full-time, and now it's 1.5 at that end of the building. Benefits, sometimes our employees change their benefit plans and we need to be prepared financially. If they do that mid-year, then we are prepared financially to support them. And we don't have as many projects happening at the tech center this year, so we were able to reduce purchase services and some supplies a little bit due to the lesser need of making adjustments up there. The electricity, we add a little bit more to electricity this year. We're unsure of what's going to happen with the tariffs and such and what's happening. So we felt we needed to have somewhat of a cushion. We had a bigger cushion there, we lessened it. But we still feel confident that if some changes are made, we can still turn the lights on. So that is all for Article 3. And now we'll move on to Article 4, which is page 10. Jumping down to the professional development and training, that was an account placement error that we needed to actually, it had 24, 25, and $600 budgeted. And then it looks like in the 25, 26, that nothing is budgeted there, and it actually should have been still a $600 line there. So it looks like an increase, but it's really just an error that it was omitted. And in turn, it doesn't make a difference in the bottom line, maybe other dues and fees, that actually has been reduced from 26,900 to 26,300 to make up that $600 difference of our error earlier. Once again, you see the increase, 46% in telephone and postage. That's an increase in postage that we talked about. Mr. Bushard did call the telephone company asking, we were in hopes that maybe we could reduce the telephone lines, but unfortunately they called it the reverse way, and we found out that there are going to be actual increases over the next 2 years. So we didn't dare take any money out of the phone lines. We are moving to a new accounting system that will allow us to separate the postage from the phones, but our current system that we've been using hasn't been as cooperative. So hopefully with the new system, we'll be able to separate those two up and be more detailed with that. Travel, there's an increase of 75%, jazz and all state competitions. We have had a great increase in number of students participating in those things, which is something to be celebrated, because COVID really took its hit on music for sure. And so it's good to see those growing, but also to see those growing, we need to support the students and have them attend the competitions that go along with that. So that's the reason for that increase. Supplies in this category are new cheering mats and uniforms. And we've already talked about the dues and fees as far as that adjustment, but also dues and fees. Once again, the more students you have attending some of the jazz, all-state and show choir opportunities, there are dues and there are expenses to that. So we needed to increase that. Article 5, which is on page 11. Salaries. So as Mr. Bushard mentioned earlier, a large part of that salary and benefits, the increase there is because of the adjustment of adding the nurse back into the budget that was accidentally omitted last year, and also a portion of the curriculum coordinator would be in that salary and benefits. You will notice that we, when we first started seeking a person to replace in the vacant position, assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction, which we had for probably 20 years in that role, and I think before that it was a curriculum coordinator. And we made the decision to not have an assistant superintendent, but rather we're looking for a curriculum coordinator. And by doing so, first of all, that allows us to tap into some of our federal funds, which we are not allowed to use federal funds for business manager, assistant superintendent, and superintendent. So it allows us to use some funds, but it also highlights the fact that a curriculum coordinator is to work with teachers and administrators and professional development for teachers, and also this role is the person that does all of the applications for our federal funds, monitors how we're using the funds, and reports back to the DOE about how the funds are being used. And through the course of the year, does all of the paperwork, and also works with teachers and administrators to ensure that we are teaching to the curriculum that the main law indicates that we have to. Currently, that position, some of the integral parts of that position has been, other administrators have taken on certain roles, and there have been stipends small stipends that have been provided to those individuals that have assumed those additional responsibilities over and above what they were hired for. And those stipends would no longer go to those administrators to do those tasks because the curriculum coordinator would then take those back. So the stipend amounts would go back towards that salary and benefits as well. So continuing on with that, purchase services in this category, in our, still in Article 5, purchase services, amount budgeted last year was not enough, so that's an increase of 42%, that really is $780. Professional development and training, the guidance department has asked for some specific training that's required. Rental equipment, down a little bit. And looking at technology, that's where we see $166,526. That is not necessarily new. Remember, I talked about we are reallocating and putting things in the correct place in the budget and the correct articles. And this is one of those things. So we have a lease that had not been budgeted in FY25 for staff computers of $31,801. We also, like I said, expense realignments to code technologies in the correct place. And also we have YBOT network watchdog software, and we get 70% reimbursed for that. Article 6, page 12. Salaries and benefits. Once again, some of that is from the curriculum coordinator position that we just talked about. So you see that in one, by making that adjustment, we decreased in the previous article and then it increased in this article. So that's an increase of the salary 9% and benefits 10.5%. Systems, technology, and software. That is our accounting, our new management accounting system. We've been using ERP Pro, and we are transitioning to Aptifund, which is a much more user-friendly program. But in order to do that, we had to pay for both systems for a short period of time as we transition, because it holds in the warehouse all of our historical information. We need to be cautious to make sure that it transfers over into the new system. So that is, that cost is only because due to the transition and for this 1 year. Article 7. Article 7 on page 13. Course reimbursement, once again, at a decrease. Fewer staff that are asking for course reimbursement. Supplies, reductions in the budget. Remember I mentioned that we would have to staff and administrators 2 times continuously asking for more cuts to keep the budget a little bit lower, and that's evidence of that. Dues and fees, here's that case, dues and fees again, that's been eliminated. And moving on to Article 8, page 14. Salaries and benefits. That is the decrease is due to reallocation between transportation and facilities. So in the new accounting system, it does allow us to break down. So if we have a bus driver / custodian, if they drive bus 30% of the time, but 70% of the time they are doing custodian work, our system allows us to differentiate. So we can now put those lines and funding in the correct place. Through routing software, we instituted a new bus program it's called Bus Right. We had been using one that the state had provided, and they are no longer providing that for us, so we needed to find a new routing system and system for our buses. This has been used by other districts in Maine, and it has many safety features, but all of the buses now have tablets in them. And so we have a substitute bus driver and they get in, the routes are already in there, and the addresses of the students and the students' names. So it's much easier for, especially for people who are filling in for the bus drivers, which does happen often since we have a lot of kids going in different directions sometimes. Telephone and postage, I think, that was an increase, and I believe that Mr. Bush, that's due to a budget oversight, correct? The $7,000. It should have not been budgeted 1,150. It should have been the 7,150. We are not looking to have that much of a decrease in that one, so it's a budget error. Electricity, that's our rate increases and anticipated tariffs that I mentioned earlier. Article 15, our facilities. Salaries and benefits, there's somewhat of a decrease here. That's because we have had a more experienced senior people maybe retiring, and as new people get hired to replace them, they are not as high up on the scale for our bus drivers and custodians. Purchase services, that is a 72% increase. You'll see that's Carroll High School, one half of the roof gymnasium. That has been prolonged for way too long, and it's to the point where we don't have a choice. It has to be replaced. And we're also doing some tile tile replacement and abatement to do that. Professional development training, there are fewer, Mr. St. Pierre, our transportation director, is taking fewer staff on professional development opportunities. Many of theirs happen away, so by taking fewer people, it saves a little bit of money. Travel increase, we were under budget last year. Once again, we're looking at $250 budget last year, and increased to $500 because we recognize that it's not enough in budget last year. Supplies increased 30%. That's our supplies and materials for that department. That, along with everything else, prices do go up. Vehicle and equipment, down below you'll see the 100% is actually a new. We have a plow truck, 2004, that needs to be replaced. A number of years ago, the city used to plow our school parking lots, and that service quit, and so our staff has been plowing and doing our sanding ourselves. So they, if it's a school day, they get it extremely early and do that before we get buses moving along the road, which actually is a cost savings going back to what Mr. Bushard was talking about. If we had had still 5 or 6 buildings open instead of 2, our staff could not have done the snow removal and the sanding for sure. But that service truck, plow truck is needed. Article 10. That's the debt service, that's on page 16. So that is our new school. It's our track bond that I mentioned earlier. And also the Carroll Tech Center received a grant. It's a $1.6 million grant. And that's a 7-year bond. And this is year 1 out of 7. So the interest only on that is $59,300. So those are all some of the components in that particular article. Article 16, Article 11 on page 16. And those are, that's our nutrition and community services. Not a lot of difference there. And lastly, just to mention that something that has impacted our tuition rate for this year and will for the future is we learned of a law, in the state law, that if we have students that are tuitioned to us, so we have students from Limestone, tuitioned to us, Connor, for high school, and Union 122. And if those students partake in a Carroll Tech Center program, then we can only charge the sending district 2/3 of the tuition rate. So for easy math, if we get $12,000 tuition for a student, we can only charge $9,000 for that student because they are attending in the tech center for a program. It's not a law that we like, and it's not one that I can necessarily say that we agree with, but it did impact our funding. This past year, we had to adhere to it, of course, once we learned about the law, so it made a significant difference in the budget year that we just wrapped up. And so moving forward, we need to be prepared. So until that law changes, we need to know that those students, their tuition is only a 2/3 tuition rate we can charge. And we cannot, I believe, and we certainly will not discriminate. So for example, the freshman students for the upcoming year will not be able to sign up and take tech classes. They get as sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Because we recognize this as an impact, and we know that those students will get less subsidy for those students when they're sophomores, juniors, and seniors, but it eases it a little bit by as freshmen not allowing it to happen. But we certainly cannot look at our tuition students and say that they're not allowed to take tech classes, but if you're a careless citizen, you can. We will not discriminate and penalize students for a law that we, like I said, don't agree with. Or I should say, I don't agree with it. I'm not going to take everybody down with me. So with that said, that's an explanation of our increases and decreases within our articles. And so I think we're ready to move on.
Do we have a nomination for a moderator?
Nominate Sam Call.
Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Mr. Collins?
Do you, Samuel W. Collins, swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Maine, so as long as you shall continue to be a citizen thereof, and that you will faithfully discharge to the best of your abilities the duties incumbent on you as a moderator of the Eastern Aroostook Regional School Unit Number 39 budget meeting on July 1st, 2025, according to the Constitution and the laws of the state of Maine?
I do.
Thank you.
So I'd like to call Lori Chapman, Shelby Landine, Deanna Pelkey, and Amber Leahy. And I'm going to swear all four of you in as ballot clerks. So, do you, Lori Chapman, Shelby Landine, Diana Pelkey, and Amber Leahy, swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Maine, so long as you shall continue to be a citizen thereof, and that you will faithfully discharge to the best of your abilities the duties incumbent on you as ballot clerk of the Eastern Aroostook Regional School Unit Number 39 budget meeting on July 1st, 2025, according to the Constitution and the laws of the state of Maine.
Yep, I do. Yeah.
So we'll go through the different articles, and hopefully everybody has their packet with them. And this is, just the first part, and of course, the referendum vote will be July 8th. We will do a show of hands for voting on the articles, except for article number 14, I believe, which would be a paper ballot. So we'll start with article number 1, regular instruction. To see what sum RSU 39 will be authorized to extend for regular instruction. Board of Education recommends $671,148.33. Do I have a motion? Motion, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed? Thank you. Article number 2, special education. To see what sum RSU 39 will be authorized to extend for special education. Board of Education recommends $3,156,402.98. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Article 3, career and technical education. To see what sum RSU 39 will be authorized to extend for career and technical education, the Board of Education recommends $2,255,924.32. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. The ayes have it. Okay. Article 4, other instruction. To see what sum RSU 39 will be authorized to extend for other instruction. Board of Education recommends $693,451.49.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Thank you. The ayes have it. Article number 5, student and staff support. To see what sum RSU 39 will be authorized to extend for student and staff support. Board of Education recommends $1,982,404.96.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Article number 6. To see what sum RSU 39 will be authorized to extend for system administration. Board of Education recommends $898,664.19.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. Passes. Article number 7. School administration. See what some RSU 39 be authorized to extend for school administration. Board of Education recommends $837,848.28.
So moved. Second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Passes, thank you. Transportation and buses, Article number 8, to see what some RSU 39 will be authorized to expend for transportation and buses. Board of Education recommends $1,148,324.86.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. Passes. Article number 9, facilities maintenance. To see what some RSU 39 will be authorized to expend for facilities maintenance. Board of Education recommends $2,725,541.39.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Passes, thank you. Article 10, on the debt service. To see what some RSU 39 will be authorized to expend for debt service. Board of Education recommends $3,402,224.98.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. Passes. Article 11, other expenditures. To see what some RSU 39 will be authorized to expend for other expenditures. Board of Education recommends $113,117.43.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. Passes. Article number 12, state and local EPS funding allocation. To see what some RSU 39 will appropriate for the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12, as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act, and to see what some RSU 39 will raise and assess at each municipality's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12, as described in the Essential Programs and Service Funding Act, in accordance with the Maine revised statutes titled 20-8, section 15688, recommends the amount set forth. The total for the RSU is $17,395,022.86, and the RSU total raised is $2,813,828.33.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, move in second, any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. Passes. Article 13, non-state funded debt service. The Board of Education recommends $2,758,152,000 for additional local funds and gives the following reasons for exceeding the state's essential programs and service funding by $2,758,152.
Thank you.
Thanks for keeping straight. I skipped number 13, so we will go to that. To see what some RSU 39 will raise as appropriate for the annual payments on debt service previously approved by RSU 39 voters for non-state funded school construction projects, non-state funded portions of school construction projects, and minor capital projects, in addition to the funds appropriated as the local share of RSU 39's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12. Board of Education recommends $182,977.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. So now we're going to move to the paper ballot. correct?
Correct.
So Article 4 is the additional local funds, which I spoke to prematurely. So to see what's on RSU 39 raised and appropriating additional local funds, recommended is $2,758,152. The Board of Education recommends this amount as additional funds and gives us the following reasons. So we'll distribute the paper ballots and we will collect them and then the ballot clerks will tally them and then we'll announce the totals afterwards.
So your registered voter cards that you have in your hand, yep, if you could go ahead and bring those up, we'll go ahead and have you put them right in the ballot box here. And I have pens for you to put yes or no. If you would, please. I've got some over here too. if you want. Thank you. I do have pens on this side. If some people want to come over here, you can go ahead and go both ways. Yes or no? Yes. Yep, that's all we need is a yes or no. Thank you. Check.
You're going the wrong way.
There's no resemblance between you two. Just a little. Oh, thank you. That's the registry book. Keep track of that.
All right, check mark, girls.
Sam, did you get those all? I did. Oh, sorry. Okay, why don't you guys consolidate and then we'll count ours and verify it. Yeah. Oh, yes, no.
So Article 14 passes with 45 yes and 10 no. So moving on to Article 15, summarizing the proposed school budget. Board of Education recommends $24,885,053.21.
So moved.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Passes. Thank you. Article 16, authorize expenditures of grants and other receipts. Board of Education recommends a yes.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Passes. Thank you. Article 17, authorize the adult education program and raises the local share. Board of Education recommends a yes to the amount of $243,500 for adult education and raises $100,000 as the local share.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those, any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Passes. Okay. Article 18, authorize the disposition of any additional state subsidy received. The Board of Education recommends yes.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Passes. Article 19, authorize a transfer to the capital reserve fund. Should the school board be authorized to transfer up to $200,000 from unanticipated additional tuition revenues to the RSU school budget, school capital reserve fund, and to extend reserve funds for maintenance of plant and minor remodeling as may be needed to the school board's discretion. Board of Education recommends yes.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? One. Thank you. And that concludes what we set out to do tonight. And I would just remind everyone and encourage everybody to exercise your right to vote on July 8th at the Caribou Wellness Center for the City of Caribou. And for the town of Stockholm, the Stockholm Town Office at 62 School Street, and that is in your packet. If I can have a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
So second,
Second.
all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.